Hello everybody, this is Mr. Rader. This video is for students taking economics. This is the second video in a two-video series on the case study on business ethics and government regulation. And in this video, we'll take a look at the Google slide for day 10. We'll take a look at the philosophical chair's protocol. We'll take a look at the original case study along with some evidence that can be used for this debate that you'll have in class. So in the introduction, Amalia, your teacher will likely ask you to look over your notes from day 9 to answer the initial question. What is your initial thought on what ought to happen in this dilemma? And that would be added to step 2 of the discussion protocol. And then looking over your notes from the independent work from day 9, you'll complete step 3 of the discussion protocol. As a class, you'll deliberate on whether the government ought to intervene and regulate Caduceus's corpse drug prices, and that'll help you to complete step 4 of the philosophical chair's discussion protocol. And then as a wrap-up, the class will decide whether or not the government should be intervening and regulating the drug prices, and if not specifically regulating the drug prices, should there be any kind of governmental intervention? Should there be some kind of regulations? So looking at the philosophical chair's protocol, it's really designed to help you consider the different views, arguments, and outcomes that are associated with a particular topic. And in step 3, this part of the protocol happens prior to actually engaging in the whole class discussion, the philosophical chairs. However, we can do this together as a way of really thinking through the process. So step 1 is the statement. So we really want to think of, should the government regulate or not regulate these drug prices? So for step 2, I just wrote in some questions for you to consider. So you may want to pause just for a moment to read through the list of questions here. It's just something to kind of spark the conversation about initial ideas related to the statement. You could do it as a simple, I believe the government should regulate the drug prices because X, Y, Z. I believe the government should not be regulating the drug prices because ABC. Really thinking about the different issues at play here, thinking about price ceilings, incentives such as a prize-based system for companies when investing in research and development, R&D, thinking about what are the consequences if these subsidies or patent protections are removed for pharmaceutical companies, and thinking about the role government should have, especially if they are actually subsidizing the creation of a particular drug. So in step 3, you'll look back to your notes from day 9, looking at the annotated bibliography, and just we'll take a look together at the case study itself and refer you to the last video, part 1 in the series, where we looked at the entire case study and we spent some time really breaking apart the scenario, dilemma, and the task. But again, if you want to pause for a moment now and take a look at some of the comments, things that were highlighted in the scenario, the dilemma, or the task, probably be a good idea. And I'll also briefly scroll down so you can see the remaining notes as it relates to what you will be doing in this discussion as we go into the philosophical chair's discussion itself. Okay, and in step 4, this really is the heart of the lesson. This is where there'll be a discussion. This is where you can think about your initial thoughts based on your acquired knowledge of what was happening in the other articles that your classmates bring up. Consider how your initial thoughts were impacted or corroborated or challenged by your reading and research. Consider evidence that supports or challenges those thoughts, and really kind of think about some of the key ideas. Now, again, the goal isn't necessarily to debate or to persuade, like you might do in a traditional Socratic seminar, but it really is to identify all the different potential points of views, arguments, and outcomes together collectively. So that when we get to step 5, we could really think about, okay, so what do we actually want to do? Do we actually intervene or not? So at this point, I'm going to go over just 3 of the articles in the annotated bibliography. If you already have a good understanding of the articles and the readings at this point, feel free to exit the video. I'll send you off and hope you have a fantastic day. But if you want to just stay on for another minute or so, it may be beneficial in terms of just seeing the kinds of evidence that comes up. So in the first article from the Cato Institute, titled "Here's a Plan to Fight High Drug Prices That Could Unite Libertarians and Socialists," who tend to identify it more along the left and the right of the political spectrum, They argue two things. First, attack the monopolies that pharmaceutical companies get through the patent protections, and then replacing the patents with prizes. So I'm just going to scroll down to one part that I highlighted, just something to kind of think about as an example. So for in this case, we have Lipitor, which is a cholesterol-fighting statin. An extension of its patent term and a second extension gave Pfizer, their manufacturer, an additional 1,393 days of marketing exclusivity, during which it took in $24 billion more. So if we wanted to uh, encourage Pfizer, their parent company, to really think about as their manufacturer, uh, to grant further access to this drug to other companies, maybe by threatening to remove the patent time or changing the patent time may encourage them to lower their price so that the individuals can actually access the drug. In this article from the National Bureau of Economic Research, I highlighted a couple of points. So the opening phrase here really looks at the consequences of what happens if prices are cut by 40–50% in the United States, and then the assumption that it'll then lead to 30–60% reduction in research and development projects being undertaken for various pharmaceuticals. And you may want to just take a minute again just to pause and read through these three highlighted paragraphs, speaking to some of the consequences of government intervention on R&D. And then lastly, this article from the Monthly Review, an independent socialist magazine, right? So again, we see in this case, this is a leftist organization. The pharmaceutical industry and contemporary capitalism. Now, again, just general reminder, whenever you're reading any of these sources in the annotated bibliography, I really do recommend engage in lateral reading, and there are videos on the DOE teaching and learning playlist and the Passport to Social Studies playlist that can help you with lateral reading. But even just something as simple as Googling the name of the writer of the article, you can learn more about their own potential biases, their political stances, and that can inform their perspective on the issue. So in this case, I just highlighted one example here, which is key to the industry's survival is its ability to extend the period during which it has a monopoly on the sale of the products. So in this case, they're corroborating the claim in the Cato Institute in turn, and really with diametrically different political views, but basically saying that you need to reduce or cut back on the patent protections so that there can be more competition, which would then lower prices. And that's something to kind of keep in mind. So really when we think about access, this is really what the key issue is. So we want to think about potential interventions that can increase access to this particular cancer drug, because at the end of the day, what we're really hoping to do is to gain greater exposure for the general public, people who are suffering from cancer, to this drug, since it is so effective in this case study. And only 2% of patients actually have access to it as of right now. Okay, so that'll do it for this video. I hope you have a very nice day and that you enjoy the discussion that comes up in your classes. Take care, everybody.